G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza, and in this video tutorial we're continuing a lesson on drawing cloth and looking specifically at how cloth folds when sitting on the body as clothing. Now, as I had mentioned in my other video tutorial, this is in two parts. The first part is cloth itself, so make sure if you haven't watched that yet, go watch that because this video will make more sense when you've watched that, where we talk about thicknesses and thinnesses of cloth, the folds themselves and how to keep it simple while conveying what we need to convey. So click the annotation if you want to check that out, or the link in the description. Otherwise, this video is on clothing. It's not on designing clothing, it's on how cloth would fold and sit on the body as clothing, if that makes sense. So jumping into it, as in the last video, we have the two different parameters of how the cloth is affected. We have the fit of the cloth and the thickness of the material. So as we have in this example here, clothes that are a loose fit and a thin material have lots of organic folds and random shapes in the material. Really thin lines, like if you grab a silk scarf and you drop it, it's going to have lots and lots of little intricate folds. Loose fit with a thick material has thick folds spread between wide distances. So if you did the same thing with a woolen scarf and dropped it, it would have much thicker folds, or leather for example. A thin material with a tight fit has lots of thin, tight stretch marks between the anchor points of the fit. So if I grabbed that silk scarf and pulled it from end to end, you would see lots and lots of really thin, tight stretch lines. Whereas if I did the same with a woolen or leather scarf and pulled each end, you'd see very few thicker stretch lines. So that's in essence what we're talking about here. Now, this is the example that we drew up in the last video tutorial to demonstrate what I was talking about. We have draped here over this ball object the thin material with a loose fit as opposed to a thick material with a loose fit. And you can see what I'm trying to demonstrate is that these folds happen much thicker, fewer and far between. So the effectiveness of the lines that we're using is more about how we use them, not how many we use. Then we have the tight fit of a thin or thick material, and you can see it's very much about communicating the thickness of the material through the use of those lines. So what we're going to be doing now is, with the same example, be drawing pieces of outfits on this female torso. So zooming in here to our upper left, thin material, loose fit female. Now the first thing that comes to mind, at least for me, when I'm talking about thin material with a loose fit, is something that like a woman would wear on the beach, or like, you know, Fabio in his little videos or posters, you know, that really kind of romanticized, soft, transparent cloth that flows in the wind. So that kind of thing seems to pop into mind, or like the over the shoulder sort of low cut top that some women can wear, or even clothes from like Aladdin, that Jasmine or Aladdin wear. Those really thin materials that are very flowy. So let's give this girl a top that cuts off at the shoulder, and we're going to be using the folds that we talked about in the last video. So again, if you haven't seen that, go check that out, to communicate the thinness of the material. And we draw our lines really thin and few and far between, and I am having that. Now, the thing to remember, like I talked about in the last video, is where the cloth rests, you don't really have those crease lines. So on the top of the breast, the top of the arm, you don't really have heaps of lines there. You have them more where they gather, which happen to be in these creases, like in the arms, underneath there. So it's flatter on the top, and then it kind of gathers at the bottom there. And I will erase these lines here because I want it to stretch in more of an organic way down here. So we have the top resting here, and then I'm going to have it draped immediately down, and we have the cloth sort of fold down around itself at the bottom here. So if I hid my reference, you can see that it's like hanging immediately down. Okay, so I don't want to draw where the breasts are because the cloth is so loose, it's kind of covering that shape. We don't need to outline the shape of the breasts or the arms because they're hidden by that flowing cloth. But what we can do is draw where gravity pulls down from those as anchor points. And we don't want to have too many lines because that will make things look really bad. But even in doing that, in hiding our reference, you can see that it falls exactly as if there were breasts in there, which is exactly what we're trying to communicate. We can add like a line in there or two just to show it hangs on top of the breasts, like that. But we really don't need to add much more than that to convey our loose fit with a thin material. Whereas coming over here, we want a loose fit with a thick material. We would pick something like a big woolly jumper, or like a Snuggie, you know, those stupid Snuggie things. Anyways, so let's give this like a turtleneck sort of look. And we have the material kind of fold around itself. And we can see already that we want our lines. See here, our folds are very thin, like this. Whereas over here, this is as small as our folds will get because this is the thinnest part of the material in the neck. Whereas as we go out here, first of all, where the material rests, we don't do much because it's sitting there. But where the material gathers, in places like here, in the arm, we bunch it up, but we really don't do too much more with it. There we go. And under here, maybe bunch it up around the waist a little bit. And over the boobs, maybe add a little bit of bunching underneath here. Every now and then I like to hide the reference just to make sure things are sitting all right. Bring it down here and bunch it up a bit at the bottom. So as you can see, especially when I hide my reference, it's easier to see. It's if anything, it's actually a bit too tight fitting. I might make it looser. So how do we make it looser? Let's erase this bottom area here. It's a bit too snug, so let's really just add some flowy material. And we really just add those big lines. This is how we make it a loose fit. So now when we hide, there you see. So this is a much looser looking material. And what have we done? We've brought it out from the surface. So we previously had it follow the skin a bit more. No, we've pushed it out a bit, and we've added thicker folds, and we've made them a bit more demanding of the space of that character. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is a thick material in a loose fit. So now we're going to come back here to our thin material and talk about tight fit. Now, how do we do this? Let's do a similar sort of top, like let's give this a V-neck. Make this a V-neck top. It comes down like that, and we'll make it a really thin material, and we'll make it really tight. So how do we convey this? In places where the material would gather, so namely like under the arms and in the elbows, I would add those little lines where we kind of have those stretched lines kind of go out like that. And everything else should be relatively flat. Because the material is thick, it should be spread across fairly flat over that substance, whereas everything else, wherever the material gathers, lots of thin lines. So for example, with the breasts, because it's a tight material, it will cup under the breasts, but rather than cupping the individual breasts, it will pull between them like this. So I often, if I'm drawing tight outfits across the breasts, I will draw those lines like that, just to convey those folds. And if I hide the reference, you can see that that's kind of got that stretched look, and that kind of comes up and stretches up towards the armpit like that. And then the rest of the outfit is pretty tight, and the same thing down here. So we just kind of have very small sections of more lines, if that makes sense. I realise I talk quite fast, so I hope that this tutorial makes sense. I'm not going too fast. So now when I hide my reference, you can see that this looks like a tight fitted thin material, and we convey that with all their little lines, but by the majority of the outfit being flat. So it's actually almost lack of lines, but where they have them, that they're concentrated and they're thin. Now coming across here finally to our thick material in a tight fit, the first thing that comes to mind for me is like a leather jacket, like a tight leather jacket. So how do we do this? Let's draw that sort of thick collar thing that some of those jackets have, like that. It's almost like a X-Men jacket that I'm trying to draw, I guess. And so what we have, I guess we have slightly thicker shoulders with jackets like that, so we'll pop it out a little bit here. And we have a bit of padding under there. But everything else is, it's almost similar to the tight fit thin material, but the folds are just a bit different. They're shorter, fatter folds. So everything else is still quite tight, but in areas where we have those folds, like here we have in the elbow and under the arm, they're shorter and thicker, like that. Shorter and thicker. Everything else is pretty well flat to the skin. So I would say, personally, that drawing tight fitting clothes is easier than drawing loose material, because in drawing the loose material we have to kind of improvise that organic flow, which can be really tricky sometimes and can be hard to make look convincing. So a safer thing to do would be to draw tighter fitting material. So let's draw a leather jacket here. We have the center of the leather jacket come down. The boobs would just kind of, you'd have the cup under here. It would almost, every now and then I need to hide my reference just to make sure it looks organic. I guess we'd have a bit of gather here at the waist. There we go. And then we have it come out here into the arms. So now when I hide my reference, I'm pretty happy with that. Now if I zoom out, you can see I'm going to create 2 pages here. I'm going to have one with all the underlays, and then the next one I'm going to hide my grid, which is this, and I'm going to color in the material. And because I don't want to show just me coloring it in, through the magic of video editing, we will get there in 3, 2, 1. So what we've got here is, on the top left we have a thin material which is loose fitted. On the right we have a thick material which is loose fitted. On the bottom left we have a thin material which is tightly fitted, and on the bottom right we have a thick material which is tightly fitted. Now the key that I've used with these things is pretty simple, as I would hope you would agree. It's very much about placement of the lines and folds. Thin material, the key to keep in mind is we have more lines in areas that are stretched, and we have no lines on areas that it hangs and sits on. And then with thick material, they're shorter lines, they're thicker folds, and there's less of them. So I hope this tutorial has been helpful. Again, it's not a tutorial on clothing design, but more how the material sits on the clothing. It's taken me a while to get to, because it's a little more complicated to try and communicate than something a little more solid like anatomy or construction. So until next time, see you later.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy my videos. You can download the reference files from this tutorial by clicking the link in the description. And remember to share any art, animation or game you make on Newgrounds.com. Until next time, see you later.